Welcome to the Talk Marketing Analysis for Life Sciences podcast with Covalent Bonds. I'm your host, Laura Brown, and I am Chief Effectiveness Officer here at Covalent Bonds HQ. In this podcast, we explore marketing and media analysis for life sciences, touching on topics from marketing data to our guests' biggest marketing failures and successes, because it is in learning from others that the magic happens. Hello, today I'm interviewing Liza Rivera, Vice President of Global Marketing at Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies. Thank you so much for joining us today, Liza.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, we're honored to have you. Before we get started, and for our listeners who maybe don't know, would you please just tell us a little bit about your company and your role at the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies is what is known in the industry as a CDMO, which is an acronym for Contract Development and Manufacturing Organization. What that means is that we don't develop or manufacture drugs or therapies for ourselves, but we help others develop and manufacture therapies for their patients. One good example of what we do and what I like to tell people is you can have one of the greatest molecules that has great potential to cure diseases or to treat ailments. We have tremendous expertise in developing processes that as they move through the clinical stages. So as you're going through the different stages of the clinical development process, you need to be able to scale up to meet the demands of either your clinical trials, and subsequently you have to have a process that you know is going to be scalable and it's going to meet all of the quality requirements for commercialization. We do a lot of different things. Myself and I have a team, and we do everything from developing and maintaining our website, looking at the analytics, organizing conferences and events and webinars. We support internal communications at the site level. We develop collaterals and materials, look at different ways to put project plans, and of course, create the marketing strategy for the year based on the business needs. So it's a lot for a small team, but we do it all.
You sound busy. So who do you report into?
I report into the Chief Business Officer.
And what kind of reporting do you actually have to do? Do you have a formal sort of reporting structure?
Well, it so happens that my boss and I have offices next to each other. And one of the reasons that we work so well together is we're able to exchange ideas, or I can give him updates right away. We do put formal reports because at the end of the day, we need to communicate marketing results to the executive leadership team. So we do reporting based on specific events or specific activities that we are, putting significant amount of either investment or resources or both.
Mm-hmm. So how would you go about that reporting? Is it based around certain sort of objectives, metrics, and then data, or is it more high level? What does that sort of thing look like?
So we pretty much, every person that is in our ELT is scientifically and numbers driven. So we need to have metrics to show success. Mm-hmm. And it depends on what kind of metrics we are presenting. So, for example, we could be looking at a conference, and in our case, the annual bio meeting is our biggest conference of the year. That's where we put a lot of resources, and it's a huge conference for the commercial team to do a lot of partnering and having business meetings, and we use the booth and we use marketing efforts to support that. So the way we look at that, for example, when I'm putting a report is, okay, how many meetings did we have? Of those meetings, how many of those were, brand new customers? Do we expect to have any confidentiality agreements come as a result? Do we expect to have visits coming out as a result of those conversations? And we started building metrics like that, which then go into the report that we issue to the leadership. There could be other things that we do. So, for example, the website for us is a very important tool, and it's a very important resource to get marketing qualified leads for the commercial team. Mm-hmm. So looking at the metrics and how well we're performing in terms of the leads that are coming in, if there's something that is we're not seeing the traffic that we expected, then we need to start digging in deeper. And I don't necessarily give them that level of detail, but I say, hey, look, guys, I've noticed that for this for X, Y, and Z, we saw, and we see pretty constant number of leads. Now we're not seeing any for this, so I'm just letting you know that we're going to be evaluating why that's happening, and we're going to be taking action to make sure that we change that. That's the kind of reporting that we do.
So it sounds like part of your role then is more on sort of a business intelligence level, taking the data out of activities you're doing and helping the company make better decisions.
What we're looking to do with the data that we're gathering is companies tend to be very reactive in terms of how they take action. And what we're trying to do now is be proactive. So in the things that are marketing related, for sure, I can definitely use that data and help correct how we are presenting ourselves as an organization, or drive the business goals that have been set by the leadership. And some of those goals may change as the year goes by. Our own marketing goals can also change as we're moving through the year. I mean, we are, being a CDMO is a very interesting business because we do many different things, and we work with customers at all stages of the clinical journey. So that puts us, that makes the marketing not being so straightforward, and we have to talk to people in different ways and communicate messages at different levels. And, we could be set in a path to do it in a certain way, and then the data starts coming and we're like, okay, we're not necessarily delivering the message the way it should be. So we need to make corrections, whether it's SEO, whether it's selecting other conferences, or making the decision to have speakers with technical content, and then what's the right technical content, all of that.
Mm-hmm. So that's really interesting. So you're evaluating message impact and then responding as it's going. How are you doing that on a practical level?
So, for example, and again, going back to, I think one of the best examples is your website, right? Because you get a lot of analytics there. And we know because we track how well our pages performing. Now, everybody knows that your careers pages and your job postings are going to receive the majority of the hits. But then let's say that we did a campaign, or we were preparing or getting ready to go to the bio meeting, or after the bio meeting. We started tracking traffic to the website and performance about 2.5, 3 years ago. So we went through a period where we were doing baselining. Mm-hmm. We were baselining everything. Now we have enough points of data that we can do a little bit of prediction in terms of what we expect to see. And if we don't see it, we know that something is not working correctly. It could be something as simple as having a glitch on your site, or it could just be that you're not delivering the message in the correct way. So if I'm trying to get a message across, whether it's to promote our gene therapy services or our monoclonal antibody delivery platforms or anything like that, I have to make sure that we have the appropriate content and that we're putting the content in the appropriate channels. And it's not always straightforward to figure out what's going to be the winning formula. So we use data to guide us in that process.
So how do you get that data? What systems do you have in place to do that?
So we use Google Analytics. That's one of the big tools that we have. And we are working now with a firm to provide consulting with SEO. So we need to make sure that we keep that pretty fresh. That's one tool that we have. We are also now entering the world of marketing automation. And we are using tools. We have implemented Marketo as a tool. We haven't integrated it to Salesforce yet, which is the CRM that we use, but that is actually a project that's in the works for right now. So we are using tools like that to get analytics. There's other tools also that we use. For example, something called Showpad. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but Showpad is a great content management system, and you can share data, you can share documents from there, and you can collect information on whether or not it's been read or not, or what people are interested in. And then if we have other platforms, whether it's our video library, we can see which videos have had the most views. So we have a pretty broad tools to give us that information depending on what it is that we're doing.
And how do you bring all of that data together to be able to look at it holistically?
So we look at it, for example, if we are running a campaign. The campaign, there's a purpose that has triggered the campaign, whether it's data-driven or it's a request, or we're tying it to perhaps an announcement that we're making or a conference. We need to understand what's the trigger and what happened before, what happened during, and what happened after. So if we create content, we run a campaign, we look at the traffic, we look at the leads, we look at the mentions that we may have if we make it into the media. We put all that together and say, okay, this was, really successful. And then we track it, depending what makes sense. It could be that we track it for a month after. It could be that we track it, for a week. Again, it depends what we do. And we continue to see, social media is another one that we use too. Where are we having more impact, and are we seeing the results that we want? And we have to measure that in different ways. I mean, I guess it depends what it is that we're doing, but we would take a complete approach to and see, okay, we're seeing the leads coming. That's good because that's what we expected. No one in social media is quite that interested in this news. That's interesting. So maybe it's not the right channel. And we are seeing traffic up to the roof, and they're going to X, Y, and Z page. So you have to put everything together. And, this video or this piece of collateral is been downloaded, 100 times. That's how you put a full picture of how your of your different marketing efforts.
You mentioned that it was about 2 years ago that the company started on the journey of bringing in the technology and looking at the metrics. What was the business driver that made you all start doing that?
So it's really interesting because the marketing team at Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies is relatively new. Previous to about 3.5 years ago, it was the sales and marketing team. So they were linked together, and marketing was not a standalone department. It was always part of the sales team. The driver to separate and create a marketing team and build it from the ground up came because of the incredible growth the company is having, and we started entering into new areas. For example, gene therapy. It's something that we entered in 2014, and we had to dedicate efforts for that in terms of the marketing. And when you have enormous growth and you expect to have enormous growth, there was a realization at the senior level that marketing was actually important. And that was the driver to create a marketing group. And then as a formal marketing team, we started doing an assessment. Okay, what are the things that we need to put in place to make our job, to show that there is ROI in what we do and that what we do is having an impact. And we had to do an education that the marketing ROI may not be measured right away, perhaps as you may see with sales, but it's longer term. And for you to be able to show that, you have to have data. So that's how, we started putting a plan. Okay, let's look at where we can get data, what kind of data, and how is this going to help us communicate to the leadership and communicate the value that marketing brings. That was a very long answer, but that was the driver.
So it's interesting that you both knew that the sales and marketing used to be an integrated function. How close do the teams work now? Or is it the typical scenario that happens in our industry where they start to fracture and silo and not communicate as effectively as they could do?
I think our teams work really well together. We want to support the sales team, and they also come and provide input for us. I mean, you can't silo yourself. And I have to be honest, I was a salesperson before entering in this role for over 15 years. I think one of the things that I view as important is I knew as a salesperson what the customer needed. I understood what tools I needed to be able to sell to that customer. I knew from being in the forefront, what are the hot topics? What are people interested in? What do customers want to hear about? And then take that information and be able to translate into valuable marketing materials, whether it's whether it's suggesting topics for presentations or going to the right conferences. You need to have that information, and if you don't have a close relationship or a close working partnership with your sales team, you're going to be missing out in a lot of getting that information, which is coming directly from the customer, which is the people that you're trying to communicate to.
I completely agree with you. It's just funny these days. We seem to see a fracture between the two. I think it's often through a miscommunication between the two departments about what marketing's role is in the lead generation program, essentially. I'm interested to know, obviously we work in life sciences. Do you find that you're ever up against, I guess, a negative perception against marketing in a scientific world, that people don't understand the impact of it and its role?
I think that's such a really great question. And I just honestly don't think that in our industry, people have a very good understanding of marketing. Now, you can understand marketing behind, drug companies, they have to do the marketing for their drugs, their medicines. That is easy for people to understand. I think it becomes a little bit more difficult when the organization doesn't have a view as to, all you do is like do pretty posters or create pretty booths and, do pretty things. And I think to some extent there has been a perception that that's all marketing does. But then it's your responsibility as a marketer and as a marketing team to do an education. And the education, again, is saying, guys, we wanted to promote X, Y, and Z. We wanted to increase the number of leads. We wanted to do whatever. Well, from month 1 to month 10, we did this, this, and this. And I can tell you right now that we increased or triple or double or whatever, increase the leads or whatever the outcome was. And this is how we did it. Once you start having that conversation with people, I think their perception starts changing. And the more data that you have, and especially there's data and then there's cool data, what I call cool data, things that you're like, wow, this is so interesting. And if you are able to communicate that, then people will be on board, and then they'll start to see that there's a lot more to just making pretty things that are part of a marketing team. Even things like social media. So participation in social media, it's something that has been taken very gradually. It hasn't been like everybody has been on board. But again, it's something new. And I mean, who knew that we were going to be using those channels to communicate information about the company? And we use some of those channels quite significantly. And for example, LinkedIn is one of those that I think are really fantastic. But you have to train your people and you have to show them the value on participating, not only for the company, but also for themselves. So we also do things like we do training sessions. We create our own training sessions and offer it as webinars to employees. And we try to build that value. And then people start seeing, so the social media, it's not just putting things, it's actually important, and it helps the company and it helps me. And these are the different things that I can see for myself. And then people, when you start giving data to people, then they get excited. I guess at the end of the day, we need to take the lead and educate people on what we do.
We tend to find that where people are involved in that planning process, they're more amenable to hearing the results and to being engaged with it. So the earlier you get them involved, the better it will be.
Absolutely. I think if the best results, and this is something that I have learned throughout my career, and I wish it had been like an obvious thing from the beginning, but when you bring people on the journey with you, even if it's just consulting, I mean, people want to feel that the input and their opinions and what they have to offer is valued and is taken into account. You don't always have to take everything, but it's all about bringing people into that journey with you. It makes a huge difference. And if that's one piece of advice I wish I had received 10 years ago, I would have taken it. But you learn that over time.
In terms of offline marketing, obviously we've talked about measuring using Google Analytics. We've talked about your sort of the technology for measuring video impact, etc. But when it comes to the softer side of it, and I use soft as a very loose term, public relations, your brand, the things that are harder to measure, how do you guys approach evaluating the impact of those?
Yeah, that's, again, a really good question. And we are working on different initiatives to present and bring our brand, create awareness to the brand. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to do things a little bit different. Let me give you an example. We opened about a year and a half ago, or just a little under a year and a half ago, a Cambridge Collaboration Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, this is not a lab. This is not, we didn't want to call it the marketing office, even though it's run by my team. And the reason we wanted to put this Cambridge Collaboration Center was obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest, biotech hub in the world. We want to have a presence there. We didn't really have a direct presence where people could see and be connected to the FDB brand. So we opened the office, and what we decided to do was we're going to use this space to build relationships, to create awareness, but we don't want to do it in a commercial way or we're trying to sell you something. So the way we're using this space is we're doing almost monthly lunch and learns that are strictly of technical content, and we do not have any self-promotional information there. And we have also opened the space. So if other companies in the area would like to use the space because they have a lunch and learn or they have a meeting or they have something that they want to do, hey, come on in. You're more than welcome to use our space. And again, we want to collaborate. We have collaborated by being in that space, working with MassBio, which is the state biotechnology organization. And we have provided them with, use of the space. And we are now heavily involved in attending all of the events that they put together. And we're also doing a reach out to the community. So we're doing STEM initiatives. In Cambridge, they have a big science festival. It's like a week long. And we are supporting it and sponsoring, not because there's going to be potential customers there. Of course, there's going to be people, but really, we want our brand to be associated with an organization that is looking to collaborate, is looking to build those partnerships that are built in the common shared passion of, making therapies that are going to make people in the world better. And I really, really, truly believe that. So that is one way that we are putting the brand. And I mentioned the STEM initiative. We created, we have a series of coloring books that we started putting out for small kids from 5 to 10. We realized, we're at these conferences, and what do people do at the big conferences? They like to take the little giveaways. And I was talking to one of my colleagues in the department, and we're both moms. And it's like, when you take that stuff, you really want it for your kids, but let's give them something of value. And then that's how our coloring book series has started. And we started with Victor Virus, which is focused on teaching kids how gene therapies work. And then the last one that we launched about a month and a half ago is Charlotte Cho, which teaches kids about bioreactors and how you make proteins that make people better out of CHO cells.
Oh,
and
that's fantastic.
It's such an initiative, but how do you measure that?
Yeah.
Well, we measure it based on at the Cambridge office, we measure it we track, of course, we know how many people come to the events. We spend a year baselining, and now we're starting to see, do people come more than once? And we have people that come to quite a few of our events. We hear it, we see it in social media. We saw you guys, or it was great to have you there. So this is a little bit more qualitative in nature, but you can still track the results. For the coloring books, how many people reaching out and saying, hey, I saw the coloring books, would love to send 50 of those books to my kids' class. Can you send me some? And so there's different ways to measure the success of those type of initiatives.
So how do you look at the actual impact of it, though? So if somebody came to you, for example, and said, so what is the return on that investment? How would you look at that?
I think at the end of the day, it comes to how are we perceived within the industry? How is our company being viewed? You can hear that. When you are in a booth at a conference and you're standing there with your CEO and you're the COO of the site, and someone comes and says, wow, you guys are big. Look at this. That's a lot of word of mouth. Another way to measure, which is a little bit difficult, is people trust your message and they trust your brand, and they feel that you're going to measure up and deliver to them what you're saying you're going to deliver. You're going to have more business. And I do think it's difficult to measure, but when you start seeing your business growing, there has to be a tie to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do net promoter score analyses and surveys?
No, we do not.
I'm interested to know why, with a company that's so focused on the brand and the brand value, was there a reason, is there a decision sort of not to do that?
I take it back. So when we do the lunch and learns, we do surveys to measure that. We do surveys. We ask people, we want to know if they found the topic valuable, if the speaker was good, that kind of things. When it comes to doing other kinds of surveys, we are looking into that right now. That's going to be a next step in our journey.
Understood. You've been on such a long journey already in 2 years. You can only do as much as you can in that time. I understand that completely. So of the metrics and the measurements that you do currently, what are the most sort of important? If a company was about to embark on a similar journey that you've been on, what would be the kind of things that you would say, consider, get baselines on this, do these measurements, these are the most sort of impactful?
I would say the leads that we receive through the website are really, really important. And that is something I keep my eye on very, very closely. Mm-hmm. I think the number for events, conferences and whatnot, looking at the number of leads that come back to us that are qualified at that point, those leads will get marketing leads that will qualify, but then the sales team, because they're at the front of the events that we put together for them, they do the sales leads. And then we track those. We track those to see, did it convert? Did we issue a proposal? Those are really, I would say, probably if I had to choose of metrics that I would want to see, are those.
We touched on value before. Do you have a way of measuring return on investment?
Yeah, so that is another really good question. And this is the one area where I wish that there was more industry-wide data that you could use, because for a lot of industries, you can go and say, okay, if you're in the consumer product space, I spent X amount in a conference, you should expect to see Y. Mm-hmm. That is not so kind of clear in our industry. It's actually very, very difficult to say, what are other people seeing? What should be the standards? And in our particular case, because we're a service organization, we don't sell gadgets, we don't sell pieces of equipment, we sell services. It's even harder. So you kind of like looking at all of the events and knowing how much you're spending. How much are you going to spend per meeting? Mm-hmm. So if you have a good contact at a conference, I know more or less you can have a good estimate on how much it costs for a salesperson to travel to a customer or a set of customers. Well, you can and that's how I correlated. What is the cost per valuable contact? Mm-hmm. And we use that, and we kind of see a trend where it's within a range of dollars. Mm-hmm. And that's what we should expect to see. Now, if I go to a conference and you invest $50,000 and you have 2 leads, well, $25,000 per lead, that's something is not working there.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, yes, exactly. So a lot of what you're saying is you're looking at the data and making decisions based on what that data says. When I talk to some people in the market, I hear a fear from people about what the data will say. So they're nervous that actually if they put in place these systems, it's going to prove that they're not doing the success that they claim that they have been. Have you come across that kind of mentality that you need to educate people that actually learning from failure is as valuable and as important as learning from the success?
Again, going back to the website and SEO, we were doing very specific messaging. And we selected our keywords and we're just going to have traffic come like crazy. Mm-hmm. Guess what? We didn't. We had it's like, oh my God, we didn't select the correct words. And what we thought from our little corner in the world was important and how people were searching was completely wrong. Now, had we not looked at the data, we would have thought that we had the greatest message in the world. Mm-hmm. So you do have to be open to get that information. And you also, as years go by, one of the things that I'm very conscious, and I always tell my team, if something works really well and you don't track it, then you get comfortable because you've done it, it's easy, it works. You need to be prepared at some point for things to change, and that worked before may not work next year, or it's not going to be working 5 years from now. And in my career, I can tell you, I've seen it with events and conferences that have gone from being top for us to not being necessarily the best. I've seen it with the way we are running campaigns. Like 5 years ago, we were doing a lot of print advertisement in magazines and publications. We don't do that anymore because we don't get data. We don't get data, and the world is going paperless as it is. You have to be prepared to adjust, and you need to, if you want to make adjustment, you need to be prepared to look at data, and you may not like what you see, but then that gives you the ability to adjust, adapt, change, and be proactive.
It's really interesting because you're saying that something that works now might not work next week or next year. I mean, we work in a scientific world, and when we think about it, we need to think about these as experiments where we control the variables and compare and contrast and do the A/B testing. How do you approach that kind of thing in a world where it's multi-channel, where it's not just going to be one touch with a target audience that will result in a sale? How do you look at the impact across multiple marketing touches on a sale, for example?
So, yeah, that again, I love these questions because that's another thing that we're starting to see in terms of what works today, not working tomorrow. But we also have to take in consideration who our customers are and their generation and how they like to receive information, how our customers today and our workforce too, there is a generational change that is happening right now. The millennial generation, I think, has now exceeded, there's more millennials than baby boomers in the workforce today. And we all know that they don't look at information in the same way or the way that you would look, or a Gen Xer would look at marketing information. And having to figure out what are the correct channels to put that. That's what I'm saying. For example, social media. Social media five years ago was not something worth putting that much effort. We had our pages. But now we have a generation of people within our industry that are using those channels. Again, it goes back to the publications, the hard copies. There's a shift now, and people are reading publications online. So digital advertisement is a lot more important than putting something on a publication that's just going to be collecting dust at some table because it's not going to be read, because that's not how the people, the audience you're trying to reach are going to be looking for that information. Creating pieces that are interactive, using tools like VR technology to give tours of your facilities. You have to move along with the times and understand what people want to see. And we look at that very much as well.
I'm going to change things up a little bit now. The next few questions I ask all of our interviewees, because of the theme of this podcast, which is obviously about metrics, but also about how you act on the insights that come from that. I like to ask each interviewee about your biggest marketing failure that you've had over your career and how you defined it as a failure and how you learned from that. So if you're happy to share that with us, we'd love to hear it.
I'm absolutely happy to share that with you. So as we established and put together this marketing team, one of the things that at the time it was myself and another member of the team, it was the two of us. And one of the things that we were doing is like, that's when we started putting tools as well. It's like, okay, we need more tools in order to be able to do this job. And we started evaluating different platforms, whether it's things like Smartsheet and Showpad and whatever, you can name it. We started evaluating platforms. And there was a platform that we looked at the time, and I don't really want to say the name of it, but it was very expensive. It was supposed to help us create content and drive traffic, and we signed up for it, and without really giving a thought that there was going to be a complete need to have resources dedicated to manage that and to create content. And oh my God, I think if there's one thing I know I share it with a lot of people in marketing is that content creation, it's hard to create content. And 2 months into this 1 year long contract, which was pretty significant, I realized that this was just a bad decision, that just jump into the adoption of that technology without having had enough time to do a proper evaluation and to fully understand what was needed behind it to make it successful. And it really wasn't the technology's fault. It was just, we just didn't do our due diligence, and it cost money. And I never really saw ROI for that. So
see, I love it. So there's two things that have jumped out at me from that anecdote that you just gave us, which has become a theme that's coming out of all of the interviews that we've been doing. And the first one being that don't jump into a technology until you clearly know what your objective is from that technology, and you know what data you want out of it, and that it will actually deliver that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that was one thing that keeps coming up. But the second one is that technology is great, but if you don't have the right people in place that can deliver on it and make the most out of it, it is also, again, an almost pointless investment. Technology for technology's sake is not the right thing.
That was a good lesson to learn. So we still love to look at different tools and different technologies, but we're very, very cautious. And until we need to have a very clear business need, marketing need for us to implement and move ahead, and having the resources that are going to make it successful. That was, absolutely. That was a big lesson.
I bet. So on the flip side, what's been your biggest marketing success?
I'm really, really proud of what we have accomplished at Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies. I think we are today a well-recognized brand. I think when we first were acquired by Fujifilm in 2011, there was a lot of confusion. Why is a camera company buying you? And people were having a hard time separating us from that. And I think over the years, we have done a really good job at establishing ourselves as a CDMO who happens to have, a great company like Fujifilm as our parent. And we have helped promote the actual message that Fujifilm is a very much dedicated life sciences company, just that it's not as well known here. I think we have done that well. But I think at the end of the day, the thing I'm the proudest is I have a tremendous team of people. And I just, for whatever reason, they have the team that I have, they have decided to work with me as part of a team. And I think just having them and having made the decision to bring those people onto the team and put them in the positions that they have today, that, again, you can have the best tools, you can have the greatest thing, but at the end of the day, it's people behind doing it, and building a strong team, a team that can work together, a team that can challenge each other, a team that has new ideas. That is invaluable. And that to me is what I'm the proudest of, because it's allowed us to do all these things that we're doing.
And I love that answer, because there is a lot of fear in the market, especially from marketers seeing the change in the industry now, worrying that their roles are going to be made redundant by technology and automation. And to hear that time and again, that it's the people that make it work, it's such a reassuring message, and I love it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you can have a ton of data. And you can have AI, we all hear about that, and you can have all that, but you are making the interpretation, and we are people, we're working with people, delivering messages to people, and you have to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, no matter what it is that you're doing, it's people. And we can't forget that the most valuable asset any company or any group or any team has is the people.
Oh, fantastic. So finally, I ask every interview if there was one question that you could ask your peers to learn from their experience, what would it be?
So we talk a lot about people, and for me, especially in my role, I like to know from other marketing professionals, what have they done to make sure that they keep their team together, that they develop their team in the appropriate way so that they choose to stay and be part of your team. I guess for me, learning to making sure that you are challenging your team and developing your team, how would you do that? What advice do you have? That's what I would like to know.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I will continue to ask that to our future interviewees, and listen out and you'll get the answer.
Okay. Thank you so much.
No,
it was fun.
Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. It has been great and fascinating to hear about what goes on under the hood of your company. So we really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you again, hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. And it was an absolute pleasure to be a part of this podcast.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.